That movie is a shit. What you think you see, what you think is what it's about. It's all theater of the mind. No, it's garbage. It's garbage. Mood and atmosphere. Now that I really like. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I want to see.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Wednesday, May the 4th, 2022, 1:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name's Dave McRae, coming to you live from the VoiceMann Studios in Toronto, Canada. I love this track. I love this track. Let's do it again. Halloween ends. Oh, this will get people excited. Hey, that Dave McRae's talking Halloween ends. Tune in. Oh, that loser? No, I don't want to watch that guy. Okay, well, whatever. Five predictions for Halloween ends. Are you excited? Are you ready? Halloween Ends is coming out this October. You are probably excited and pumped and ready to go. All you little fucking Halloween minions out there. You're probably excited. Of course, we had the CinemaCon trailer drop last week at CinemaCon only in typical Las Vegas fashion. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Whether or not the little teaser trailer that dropped at CinemaCon will be the actual piece of marketing they release to the public in due time, the first sort of visual thing we see. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe not. We don't know. They might tweak it. They might add a few things, take a few things away. Who knows? We have to remember that CinemaCon is for, basically, by and large, for NATO, the North American theater owners. It is for them. It is to showcase their upcoming slate. So there may be some tweaks here or there, or it may be a completely different thing. Who knows? It may be the exact same thing. We don't know. But that being said, I wanted to jump on here today, and I wanted to talk about five predictions for Halloween Ends. Now, I will get to the Q&A part of the show. If you want to send in some, if you want your question to be guaranteed an answer, of course, you send in a super chat. You can send in super chats now if you wish. I will not answer it this very second, but I will at the end when I'm done going through my whole rigmarole here. I will go over to the super chat or the question part of the Q&A. But super chats, of course, I just like to let people know if you want your question guaranteed an answer, that's one way to do it. You don't have to do that. I'm just saying if you want it to be guaranteed an answer, it's one way to do it. Because obviously it takes priority for obvious reasons. But what these five predictions are for, what I am doing is I am basing it on what we know about Halloween Ends right now. So this isn't really, I mean, it is speculation, but it's not shooting from the hip necessarily, right? Talking about all sorts of crazy ideas and there's, well, I think that this. Well, yeah, we can do that, and that's fun to do. But I always like to kind of look at what we know, little tidbits of information that is out there, and then based on that, sort of explore what that could mean. Now, that doesn't mean that we're right. It doesn't mean that we're wrong. It just, and information changes. That's another thing I want to make very clear in this video. Information changes. Also keep in mind that what I am predicting isn't necessarily what I want to see, what I am hoping they do. That doesn't mean that I can sort of separate the fan from, maybe some things that I'm not happy about, but I think that they're going to do. I can do that, right? I think some people sometimes think that when they, well, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, I think sometimes people might think that when I talk passionately about what I think is going to happen or what that ought to, I think it's the passion that I bring that sometimes people think that, oh, he's passionate, therefore that's what he's hope. No, it doesn't. Sometimes it can, but I'll usually tell you if it's what I really hope they do or want them to do. But I just want to say that what I'm talking about here today doesn't necessarily mean this is what I hope they do or that I agree with all of this. This is just what I think is likely based on the tiny little bit of nothing information we know, because there's very little information out there. And if you grew up through the internet age and the social media age, that must be really fucking annoying to you. You must be going, we don't know anything. Of course, if you're over 40 like me, and you are used to living in a world where there's really no such thing as the internet, this is kind of great. This is kind of cool. Not knowing anything at all about anything is great. I love it. But of course, there is a little bit of information out there. So let me start, and this is really in no particular order. So I'm not really basing this on any particular order. It's not like a top 5, you know what I mean? Where you go like 5, 4, 3, 2, and then number 1 is the most predicted. It's not like that. This is just 5 predictions in general, based on information that is out there now. So let's start with number 5. We'll start with number 5. Again, this is in no particular order. But this is based on, we're going to talk about plot, okay? And we're going to talk about little things as it relates to the plot. So what could this be about? Well, obviously, we don't know the overall sort of narrative, right? We can take wild stabs, no pun intended, or maybe I did mean that. We can take wild guesses, based on what happened in Halloween 18, based on what happened in Halloween Kills. But of course, we don't know the overall arcing sort of, the beats, right? The plot beats, the plot points, A, B, C, D, first act, second act, third act. I mean, it's a Halloween movie. It's a slasher movie. Most Halloween fans, most horror fans can take pretty accurate stabs just based on the fact that, well, it's a Halloween movie. You're going to have some kills. You're going to have some blood. You're going to have this. You're going to have that. We can do that. I mean, that's not hard. But the more intricate stuff, right? The more sort of juicy, meaty stuff of the narrative is what we really don't know. So here is a quote from Jamie Lee Curtis. Okay, here's a quote from Jamie Lee Curtis. Wait, hang on a second. Is this the one I want to go to first? Let me see here. Let's go to. Hang on one second here, folks. I should have. Okay, yeah, let's go to the David Gordon Green quote first. So let's go over here. And this is a David Gordon Green quote, okay? And I don't have my glasses on here. Hang on, I think I got to put on my glasses for this. There we go. So, okay, so where I have it highlighted there, it says, now this is David Gordon Green saying this, okay? This is back last fall. He says, there's not a lot of games in ends. There's not a lot of wittiness and retro joy. Okay, so what he simply means there is there's not a lot of games. Like there's not a lot of clutter. It's boom, 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 boom. It's pretty straightforward, right? That's basically what he's saying there. Okay, so that's an important piece of information. Then he says there's not a lot of wittiness, right? Well, we know what wittiness is, cheeky stuff, maybe some humor, some irony, things like that. There's not a lot of that in this movie. Again, pretty straightforward. Boom, 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 boom. There's not a lot of retro joy. Okay, so what could he mean by that? Well, probably not a lot of, like seeing the Halloween 3 masks and getting a little Easter egg and an Easter egg here and an Easter egg there and an Easter egg here and an Easter egg there and an Easter egg here and an Easter egg there and an Easter. No, there's not a lot of that. Right? We did that in 18, not a lot, but you did a little bit of an 18, you did a little bit of an Halloween Kills. This is now, we've moved past that now, right? This is the end. This is the third act. This is the climax. We got to bring it home. We got to stick that landing. So he's basically saying there's not a lot of games, right? Pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of wittiness and retro joy. Okay. It's kind of a coming of age film. Okay, now David Gordon Green, I first heard him say this at the Halloween Kills screening, I believe, before the movie was released. There was a screening and there was a Q&A afterwards. And David Gordon Green had first mentioned it there. It was back last September or October or whatever the hell it was. And he said coming of age story. Well, what is a coming of age story? By the way, if you're just tuning in, we are talking 5 predictions. Okay, this is in no particular order. We're at number 5 right now, but we're just talking about sort of plot, narrative, story, plot points, beats, all that kind of stuff. Everything that encompasses sort of what the fuck's going on. That's what we're talking about right now, in case you're just tuning in. So, and we're basing it on what we do know, right? So we're doing our best to not shoot from the hip and just take wild stabs. Pun intended there. So a coming of age story. Well, what is a coming of age story? Well, basically, a coming of age story is, generally happens to a individual or a group of individuals, okay, like in the case of Stand By Me, right? Where you start in one place, okay? The character or characters start in one place, okay? And they end up in another place by the end of the movie in terms of their growth, their maturity, right? What they learn, what they discover about themselves, okay? And that's very important. Now, we can think of, okay, so who's a character in this new Halloween trilogy that is ripe for? Well, Laurie Strode, I think is important, and we're going to get into that in a few seconds. That's important. But I think Allison is really important as well. And again, it can be about individual. It can be about it can be about a group of people, right? 1 person, 2 people, 3 people. I mean, pick it. It doesn't really matter. It's just about either, they start here and they end up here. And it really is about a growth of maturity, a growth of self-discovery, right? So Allison is ripe for that. Allison is ripe for, going on because, we see where she was in the first movie. We see what happened to her father at the end of the first movie. Then what happens to her mother at the end of the second movie. This girl's, and her friends are killed, right? And the things that she appeared stronger in Halloween Kills for sure. But, from a writing perspective, that shit's gotta, for this character, that's gotta be tough. That's got to be tough. And you want to tap into that. How is this affecting this character emotionally? She's young, right? Her character, I don't know how old Andy Matichek is. She's probably in her mid-20s, probably. But I think she's playing somebody who's like, 17, 18, 19. She's somewhere in there, right? That's going to have a huge effect psychologically and emotionally on this individual. And when we fast forward 4 years into the future, okay, 4 years into the future, there is all that time in there that she would have been struggling with that, right? Coming to terms with that. And I do believe that Allison is likely to struggle with that, okay? I do believe that. Anyways, we'll get to more on that in just a second. It's a coming of age film and it's a very different tone. Well, it would be. If it's more of a coming of age film, it would be a very different tone and feeling than the second movie for sure. And it's probably going to feel a little more like 18 and less like Halloween Kills, because 18 was a little smaller, right? More confined. Kills was a little crazy off the charts, off the shelf with all the kills and I wasn't a big fan, but you know what I'm saying, right? So that makes sense. That makes total sense. A different tone. And that's what excited me about it, is to have the 3 chapters that I've been involved in be very different from each other. Again, this is David Gordon Green talking. They are all there to honor John Carpenter, but aren't necessarily just emulating him. And then, of course, Green added down below, I sent Carpenter the new draft of Halloween Ends the other night, and I said, if it feels too Christine, let me know. Now, this is another big one that fans are losing their minds over. What could this mean? What could this mean? Well, we'll talk about it. Let me know if it feels a little too Christine for Halloween Ends. It's just a love. It's just a love for Carpenter. It's more than just, hey, here's a character and a community that you've created. It's here's an appreciation of your legendary body of work. So, okay, so Christine. Well, there are a lot of fans out there that tend to think literally, right? Tend to go to the extreme and think literally. Okay, so what is a major sort of thing, a plot point about Christine? okay? The Carpenter film, Christine, based on the Stephen King book. Well, it is about a car that essentially comes alive, that is evil, and, for all intents and purposes, possesses Arnie. And Arnie becomes infatuated with this car, right? And he becomes a different person. He starts somewhere, he's a bit of a nerd and a geek, and then he ends up this cool kind of not really being himself kind of thing, right? But I don't think we should be taking it literally, okay? I think there might be some parallels. So going back to sort of talking about Allison's character now, what I think is likely, based on the 4-year gap, is that Laurie Strode, because remember, I've talked about this many times, Laurie Strode has just discovered in Halloween Kills that it was never about her. Now, you got to think about that. Again, from a writing perspective, what would that do? This is her whole identity. Everything she's known about her, her whole life, Laurie Strode's whole life has been about Michael Myers. Remember, Part 2 doesn't exist, H2O doesn't exist, Resurrection doesn't exist. It's just that first movie. And even though, I agree, if they could have fit 2 in there somewhere and tried to, they probably should have done. But anyway, it's just that first movie. But her whole life, for 40 years, she couldn't hold down a fucking job. She couldn't hold down relationships. She became the crazy cat woman down. I know she doesn't have cats. I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying, right? She became the crazy cat lady, that crazy, weird woman that lived on the outskirts of town. Oh, her. And maybe she came into town once every couple of weeks to get groceries. And maybe she hadn't showered because she was spending too many times in her backyard shooting fucking guns, and she smelled and she was the crazy lady. She always looked unkept. She looked, unkept, unwell, because she was obsessed with Michael Myers. It became her identity. It was her identity for 40 years. So in Halloween Kills, Hawkins says, it was never about you. It was never about her. It was never about her. He ain't after you, lady. It was never about you. What does that do to somebody? Oh my God. The psychological ramifications of that are crazy. The sudden realization that you've wasted your whole life, essentially. She wasted her entire life for nothing. It was never about her. So that's a really important thing that I think we're going to see in Halloween Ends. At least that actually is something I would like to see. At the beginning of the show today, I talked about that these predictions aren't necessarily things that I want to see, because that is true. I mean, things I talk about aren't, but that is something I would like to see, because that's meat on the bone, right? And that makes sense, where we fast forward 4 years into the future, and those first behind the scenes photos of Laurie Strode that came out when she was in her trailer and she's snapping a selfie of herself in the mirror, or she's outside, beside the trailer, whatever. Many fans did notice, wow, Laurie Strode looks well. Her hair is dyed. She looks, she's in a new jacket. She looks like she's had a makeover on fucking Maury Povich or something. Well, maybe not Maury Povich. He was all about lie detector tests and stuff. But maybe Sally Jesse Raphael. I'm dating myself here. Oprah, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Come on out. And the doors open up and there's Laurie. I mean, that's what it looks like, right? But that makes sense. That makes sense because the identity is changing, right? The identity is changing. And I think in that 4 years, we've seen Laurie go through therapy. She's not it's still there. I mean, this is for the rest of her life process. She will be dealing with this for the rest of her life. But I think she is in a different place. I think she may have a job, right? Maybe she's got a little job down the street at, the hardware store, or she's a librarian, or if I was writing the story, I would write it. I wouldn't write her being sort of, I think her demeanor, because Laurie was very much of a hard ass, right? Very much of a hard ass and a tough cookie she was, I would suspect that hard shell that she has dissipated a bit. I don't think we're going to be introduced to a hard shell Lori, because there's no need to be that way anymore. Right? It was never about you. You know, you don't have to be on alert. You know, honey, no, come home from school at 3:00. Let me know where you're going. She doesn't have to be that strict, obsessed. I think we're seeing a bit of a change in her. And at least that is something I would like to see, because it makes logical sense to me. That doesn't mean that she's forgotten about it. That doesn't mean that hard shell, that you know, sort of, diligent, obsessed Lori is completely gone. But I think we are seeing we are seeing the residual effects of therapy, of where she is now. I think she's happier. I think maybe her and Hawkins are together, maybe, perhaps, you know, that would make sense to me. And Hawkins, you know, they share in that commonality of the experience with Michael Myers and all that kind of stuff. And I think she's in a different place. Allison, I think, is a different thing. I think Allison is likely, and again, this is something that I wouldn't mind seeing because it does make logical sense. I think Allison is struggling. I think Allison is struggling. And I think she's going down a darker path. I don't mean she's going down a darker path and becoming the killer. I don't mean that. At least I hope not. Okay? That's something I don't want to see. But I do think she's in a darker place. And I think she is struggling with the death of her father. I think she's struggling with the death of her mother. I think she's struggling with the death of her friends. Still 4 years out. And I think Lori recognizes this. I think she sees the writing on the wall that Allison is now heading down a similar path that Lori went down after she went through all of that shit back in 1978. And I think that's where sort of a lot of the coming of age aspect is going to happen. It's going to happen to Allison. So she's going to start here and she's going to end up sort of somewhere else by the end of the movie. I do agree with Green that I think it is going to be a smaller film, right? So it's going to be more intimate, more character driven, more drama. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have, I don't mean drama in the sense of, you know, unnecessary drama. I just mean, you know, character moments, real strong character moments, good character development progress, right? You know, where we start one place, we end another. That doesn't mean you're not going to have your kills or your typical Halloween slasher stuff. You will, but it's not going to be like Kills. Okay. It's not gonna be like Kills. I think it's going to be more character driven. And that makes sense to me. I mean, if you're fast forwarding 4 years and you're not picking up on the same night, we would have to, where are these characters now? You know, what have they been? Logic tells us that they would have gone through some sort of therapy, right? Maybe not, but that's what it tells me. And I think Allison is in a different place. I think she's in a darker place. And Lori's recognizing the struggle. She's recognizing the struggle and sees the path that Allison is heading down, sees the parallels, and is fearful and is scared for her. I think that might be an interesting sort of dynamic there. It would be strange to me if both Allison and Lori are in the same place, emotionally, psychologically. I mean, you know, perhaps, but I think it's more interesting if they're not. So that's what I think there. Okay, let me see. And again, these are based on information we have now. That doesn't mean that when new information comes out, things can change. But you said, well, yeah, that was based on what I have here. And then when new information comes out, we all can go, oh, okay, well, you know what? Some things have changed, but now I think that's how it works, folks. That's how science works. It's not scientific, but you know what I mean. Okay, let me go over to now where, what is this here? I think that is, okay, yeah, that's that. So, okay, again, we're still on number 5. We're still talking about sort of plot and everything and all that kind of stuff here. Again, this is in no particular order, but we're still on number 5 on my 5 predictions because we're talking about the plot and the story and the direction, all that kind of stuff. So here's a quote from Jamie Lee Curtis. I've talked about this quote before. Again, it's important that you always take things with a grain of salt. Okay, you always take things with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, it is an interesting quote. It's an interesting quote. And here it is here. So here's the, and you know this, you've seen this before. I've talked about it. Many others have talked about it. It's a quote dating back to last fall, but here it is nonetheless. So this is Jamie Lee Curtis, and she says, so there's one more film to make, and I know what it's about. So this is before they shot the movie. Again, this is like during her press tour for Halloween Kills. And it's going to blow people's minds. Now, Jamie Lee Curtis is not, you know, she's not shy from hyperbole. Okay. I mean, she also said that Halloween Kills is a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece. She said it twice. Well, if there's one thing Halloween Kills is not, it's not a masterpiece. But that's also because I'm somebody that doesn't think we should throw that word around so loosely. There are very few masterpieces in the world, and you would not put Halloween Kills on the shelf next to The Shawshank Redemption. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work. I'm not saying that, you know, if you like the movie and think it's a great movie, that you're wrong. I'm just saying that I don't think we should be, you know, so, you know, I mean, it's her job. She's an executive producer. She's an actor. She's going to be, you know, hyping it up. She's on the press tour. She's doing press junkets. This is her job. She's going to do this, right? A little bit of hyperbole here, a little bit of exaggeration here. Doesn't hurt the, you know, the ticket sales. You know what I'm saying? Whether she fully believes it's a masterpiece, who knows? But anyway, it's going to blow people's minds open. This is the key word here. Okay, it's going to blow people's minds. It's going to blow people's minds open. Ah, well, that's interesting. Well, what do people say, or they mean when you usually hear people say you need to have an open mind? Now, am I reading too much into this? Yeah, maybe I am. But hey, we're speculating here, right? We're looking at the words. We're looking at the specific language that she chose. Now, I'm not a language expert. I'm not an expert in psychology or sociology, but I do have at least a borderline baseline interest in it. And I do find that choice of word interesting. It's going to blow people's minds. It's going to blow people's minds open. Ah, okay, interesting. She goes on to say, it's going to make people very angry. And it's going to be shocking because it asks a lot of questions. So that's all I can tell you. Well, there is a lot of stuff there to dissect. Again, if you're just joining us, we are still on number 5 because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to plot, narrative, story, direction, plot points, plot beats, all that kind of stuff. But this is interesting. So let's break it down here. So there's one more film to make. Yep. Okay. Well, we know that. And I know what it's about. I think you should. And it's going to blow people's minds open. Well, this tells me, okay, actually, let me first jump because they're connected. Let me first go over here to Nick Castle's quote from he was at a con just recently, and he says, "It sounds like it should be pretty good." Castle continues, "I do a little cameo in this new one. We'll have the end of at least David Gordon Green's version of Halloween. I think there might be more because of all the success of the trilogy, but Green will have a very surprising storyline and ending for everyone. It's absolutely something I don't think you would have ever guessed in terms of the way it's going to unroll." Now let's jump back over here to Jamie Lee Curtis. Now again, is this something Castle? I mean, you know, I believe he's being truthful in the sense that there is something that is in the narrative, that's in the story, that is going to be perhaps controversial, perhaps unexpected. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to hate it or everybody's going to love it, but that is perhaps maybe a little avant-garde. That makes me a little worried because I'm somebody that is very linear and I don't want too many risks taken. Now, again, we haven't seen the movie. We could go watch the movie and go, "Oh my God, this is amazing." I totally agree with that, even though it's a little avant-garde and out there. Blow people's minds open. There's a creative decision that they've made in regards to the direction of the story that sounds like is a little avant-garde perhaps. We'll get back to that in a second. It's going to make people very angry, and it's going to be shocking because it asks a lot of questions. Well, this tells me, and it asks a lot of questions. Okay, well, it doesn't say it answers a lot of questions. It says it asks a lot of questions. So what does this tell you? Okay, well, this tells me, and this is something I actually like, by the way, okay, is that, and you've heard, if you follow me for any length of time, you know that I am somebody that believes that Halloween Ends needs to end on more of a philosophical note. No cheap gimmicky stuff, no cheap jump scares like Michael's eyes suddenly opening or him coming out of the closet like some ridiculous 80s cliffhanger that tells you there's going to be another movie next year. Don't do that. End it on more of a philosophical, mature note, okay, that asks questions, that plants the seed of doubt into your audience minds, but still feels like a complete story, still feels like it is the end, but it gives the audience something to talk about, to discuss afterwards, where they go and they watch, for example, so I watched the movie The Hole in the Ground the other day, the horror movie The Hole in the Ground. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie or not. It's on Netflix right now. I'm a little late to the party on it. I think it's an Irish horror film. Great movie. Really liked it. Love the ambiance, love the mood, love the atmosphere, love the slow burn. I thought the acting was really good. And that's a movie that ends, if you've seen the ending of that movie, that's a movie that ends on a note where you think to yourself, is it? Is it not? Is it? Is it not? Interesting. It doesn't, it makes you think. It makes you think, right? And that's something that I hope they do, because if you just ended on a sort of, now that doesn't mean you've got to go avant-garde and you got to get really crazy and experimental. It doesn't mean you have to do that. It means don't end it in a typical way that, like I said, the eyes opening or his hand coming out, all that just junk stuff. End it on more of a philosophical note. And it sounds like that may be the direction they're going. It's shocking because it asks a lot of questions. Now, that could mean the narrative throughout the film. That could mean the ending of the movie, right? Where you sit there and you go, oh, what? But if it's done really well, and if it's done right, you as an audience member, even if there's some questions that are left open, it's still, hopefully there's still that I feel complete. Interesting. Well done, right? Like my idea and my sequel concept where I have Michael and Laurie die together in a big fire in Judith Meyer's bedroom and blah, blah, blah. The house burns to the ground and yada, yada. And as we're sort of pulling back from the rubble of the house 2 weeks later or whatever the case is, you hear Dr. Loomis's line from the TV version of the original Halloween saying, "You think you fooled them, haven't you, Michael? But not me." It's like, what? And then it cuts to black and the credits roll and it's like, what does that mean? And it's cool because it's like, it plants the seed of doubt and it asks a lot of questions, right? What does it mean? Is he dead? Is he not dead? Is it more of a it's more philosophical, right? It's more about evil and how evil goes on and that kind of stuff. But you'll always have fans that take it literally and think that maybe Michael is actually still alive, which he really is, and all that kind of stuff. So there's so many different ways that you could do it, but this is interesting. And it does tell us that, again, blows people's minds open, and asks a lot of questions. Well, that tells me be prepared to have an open mind on the direction that they're going, that it's going to be maybe a little unexpected. Now, I have heard a lot of people talk about this dream idea that for whatever reason, at the end of Halloween Ends, Laurie wakes up in the hospital back in 1978 and it was all a dream. Listen, anything is always possible. It's always possible. That's not the question. Anything's possible. But is it probable, right? Is it likely? Because then where do you go from there? So she wakes up in 1978 and it was all a dream. And then what? We just watched the last 15 minutes of Halloween 2 again? And where do you go from there? I mean, maybe at face value, it's like, oh, that's cool. But And then what should be the question? I do not think they're going to do that. I do not think Halloween 18 Kills and Ends is just going to be one big dream. I don't think that's the blow your mind, ask a lot of questions type of thing that they're talking about, because it just doesn't make logical sense. It's like, where do you, again, anything's possible, but is it probable? And I think it is highly unlikely. I wouldn't bet on it. Let's just put it that way. But this is interesting. Again, if you're just joining us, we're still at number 5. We're talking about all the sort of interesting sort of direction of where they're likely going to go. And I do find that really interesting. So, you know, what are some, well, I mean, it's going to blow your mind. Well, here's something I don't want. That I think they are likely, again, based on the information we see right now, this is something I don't want, but I'm a little worried based on the language that is being used by Nick Castle, by Jamie Lee Curtis. Again, we could be reading too much into it, right? We're just crazy. I'm sure they watch some of these videos and go, look at these sweaty nerds. But it's true. So one thing I am worried about is the explanation for why Michael is who he is. Now, what is that explanation? I don't know. I have no idea again, you can go to the extreme and you can let the cat right out of the bag, right? And you can say, you can go the Halloween 6, the Curse of Michael Myers route and Thorn and the cult and all that kind of stuff. And that is the cat is out of the bag. That is everything that is on the table. Or you could go, again, asks a lot of questions, right? You can go more of the, the nuanced approach, right? About, it's over. Fuck. Interesting. Which is, again, the approach I'm hoping for. I just hope they don't explain anything about Michael. Him, the shape, doesn't need an explanation. You don't have to have an explanation in order to bring this thing home, to stick the landing. You don't have to do that. One of the things that I've talked about on this channel for the last 4 years, and I've been the gatekeeper of, is that the anonymity, the ambiguity, and the mystique of Michael Myers should remain intact. It should never be revealed. The why should never be revealed. He's not Freddy, he's not Jason, he's not Chucky, he's not Ghostface, he's not Leatherface. We know their backstories. We know the whys. We know where they come from. We know what's going on. But the mystique of Michael, the not knowing, right, is part of the mystique, is part of the fun, is part of the allure of the character. So I'm really hoping they don't try to give an explanation for this. And maybe that's what's going to make people angry. And it's the explanation that's going to blow people's minds open. Hey, you got to have an open mind here because we're going here. And it's like, I don't know about that. I don't think you need to do that. So I'm really hoping we don't see it. But I think it's possible, folks. I think it's possible. I think it's possible based on some of the language that I'm hearing that they may try in some sort of way to give you an answer, maybe without giving you an answer. Do you know what I mean? It's tricky, but I'm really hoping they don't do that. All right. And then what's this one over here? This is from, did I read this already? I think no, wait a minute. That wasn't that one. It was this one here. This is... Okay, so this is David Gordon Green again. No, excuse me. This is Jamie Lee Curtis. Asked what she'd say to people who want more Halloween movies after Halloween ends. Curtis said, "I signed up because David Gordon Green wrote a really interesting script. The last thing I thought I'd do was another Halloween movie. I had other stuff I was doing. I was very happy." Again, this is last year, but I was really impressed with his understanding of not only what happened to Laurie, but this new trilogy of stories. If another filmmaker comes up with an interesting story to tell, I'm never going to say I'm uninterested in telling that story. Well, that's interesting for all of you out there that think that Laurie Strode may die. I actually do think she's going to die. I'm actually hoping she does die, not because I don't like Laurie, but I think it's, we'll get to that in a second in my next predictions. But I do find that interesting. Again, we could be reading too much into it, but it is interesting. I can't imagine it. It's unlikely to me. It would be shocking to me to imagine somebody topping what David Green, is doing in a trilogy of movies, all directed by the same person, all made by the same crew, all acted by the same group of people. I would be shocked. But it's not impossible, as I just said to you. Creatively is the source. It's the source of all of it. So if somebody comes up with something super creative, I would be happy to join them. I just find it hard to imagine that that's going to occur. Well, that's interesting. So that kind of sounds like Jamie Lee Curtis is saying, hey, I'm kind of open to returning to playing Laurie Strode again. I mean, that kind of sounds like that. Okay, now let's move away from number 5. We're talking about number 5 now for 40 minutes, but hey, that's just the way it is. There was a lot to talk about in there, and then we'll recap at the end, and we'll jump over to your questions. Again, if you want your question guaranteed an answer, send in a super chat. That's the way to do it. Okay, so number 4 is, again, this is no particular order, but number 4 for me is that Laurie and Michael... I'm predicting, again, this is a prediction, that Laurie is going to die at the very least. I think Laurie needs to die. I think Laurie does need to die, but in a heroic fashion, in some sort of way that isn't her, tripping over a rock and hitting her head. I mean, I would like to think that she goes out either she sacrifices herself essentially to save Allison, right? And maybe it's that sacrifice that sort of turns Allison around. It's almost like that moment in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom when Short Round is like, Indy, I love you. And he burns him with the torch and it snaps Indy out of that voodoo shit. And he's like, oh, what the fuck kind of thing, right? I'm not saying they're going to go that route, like that black magic-y of it all. I'm just saying that maybe there's something like that, that happens. But I do think Laurie is going to die. I do think she's going to die in this movie. I will be surprised if she doesn't die, to be honest with you. And I think it's a missed opportunity, not because for a lot of things that Halloween fans say, right? They say like, oh, I'm so tired of Laurie in movies and she was in 1 and 2 and H2O and Resurrect. I'm so tired of her. I get that. I get it. But I'm thinking narratively, I'm thinking story. I'm thinking about, does it fit the story? Is it the right thing to do creatively from a character point of view? Because really at the end of the day, that's what matters. Right? You don't want to kill somebody just because fans are sick of them. No, does it suit the story? Does it fit the story? Does it fit the story you're telling? And I think in this instance, I think well, I mean, I don't know what the story is yet, but it might. And I think it would give weight and bottom, an emotional bottom to the story, depending on how you do it, especially if Laurie is finally just learning to live a life that doesn't revolve around Michael Myers, right? She's just learning to come to terms with that. And then she realizes she's got to suddenly be thrust back into it for a short period of time, only to sacrifice herself so her daughter can have the life that she never had. And I think really that makes sense to me. It makes sense that you would go in that direction. So that's my number 4. My number 3 is... let's talk about, again, no particular order. Let's talk about more of the Christine thing. I guess this is more in line with number 5, but the Christine thing, the only thing I can make sense of the Christine thing, okay, really the Christine parallel is that Allison, like Arnie, became obsessed with the car and the evil, and he was possessed. I don't think they're going to go the route of Allison literally becoming possessed, like a la Jamie Lloyd at the end of Halloween 4, and Uncle, well, that's part 5, but still, I don't think they're going to go, at least I hope, again, they don't go that avant-garde. It's always possible, folks. It's always possible. But the only thing I can think of, because I don't think it's literal, right? I don't think some car is going to show up that she's going to be upset. I don't think it's a literal interpretation. It's the essence, right? There's an essence there. And the only essence I can think of is that maybe Allison becomes obsessed with Michael and becomes obsessed with the evil, and her demeanor is changing. Her personality is changing, right? And, Laurie is seeing that. And that's where Laurie comes in. And that goes back to my other, prediction in the sense that she's, she doesn't want that. She wants her granddaughter to have the life that she never had. Don't upset. It's not about you. It's not, not about, you can't do this. And because she lost her friend, her mother, her father, and all this kind of stuff. So maybe that's what it is. That's the angle. Like Arnie was obsessed with the car. Allison becomes obsessed with Michael and her demeanor changes. She's not literally changing as in she's becoming evil and she's being possessed literally. It is more psychologically the obsession with Michael and hunting him down or finding all about or whatever the case is, because she lost her mother to him, she lost her father to him, she lost her friends to him, I think is taking over. The obsession, like how the obsession took over Laurie. So I think there is that, that generational trauma kind of thing happening there. And I think maybe that's it. Maybe that's the Christine angle, because I admit, I too have trouble struggling finding what that could possibly mean, because I don't think they mean literally, obviously, right? So it's about an essence at the end of the day. And then, so that was number 3, right? Number 2 for me is Michael dies. I do think Michael is going to die. I think this is going to be the end of Halloween as we know it. I think Michael is going to die. But I think it is going to, and again, this might just be part of me hoping this is what they do, because this is what I want them to do, because I think this is the right thing to do. Again, going back to the more philosophical, it answers some questions, but it creates new ones, right? That's really what you want to do in this kind of a situation and scenario. And I think Michael is going to die, but I think there's going to be that, I don't know how they're going to do that, whether it's going to be very similar to what I did in my sequel concept, or very similar to even like a great idea that somebody had mentioned. Somebody sent in a message on a Two Dude show on our 150th episode. I think they talked about this on the Slaughtered Lamb as well, had mentioned that maybe the movie, again, it's the principle of this. It's a cool ending. Doesn't mean they're going to do exactly this, but it's the principle of sort of the idea of the ending, that maybe, the movie's all over and blah, blah, blah. And then we cut to like some other town, Halloween night, some kids are being babysat, and this little kid looks out his window and he sees the silhouette of the shape across the street, right? And it's like, and then it cuts to black and that's the end of the movie. Well, again, that doesn't mean that's Michael Myers across the street. It's more symbolic. It's more philosophical, right? That evil will live on. There will always be a boogeyman somewhere. In some small town, everybody, like Sheriff Brackett said, every town has a, or what the hell did he say? Every town, what does he say? Every town has a haunted house or something like that. There's some line in the original Halloween where he says like, I know there's the line in, Freddy's Dead, every town has an Elm Street. That's not what I'm talking about. There's some line in there that alludes to that, but it's true, right? All small towns have that house and have those stories and kids being afraid and all that kind of stuff. And so again, it's more of that it will live on sort of thing, right? And I actually kind of like that ending, to be honest with you. I actually wouldn't mind if that was the literal ending that they did, but it's the principle of it. It's the idea of it, right? You're not ending it in some sort of cheap fashion where Michael's eyes are opening, his hands coming in. You know what I mean? It's nothing. It's smarter. One could say it's elevated, I guess, but I don't mean that for whatever reason, people are taking that to mean in this pretentious, condescending, you're too dumb to understand horror. That's not what it means. It just means there are certain narratives and stories that are more cerebral. And yes, there are people that will understand the layers and the symbolism and all that, and there are people that won't. That's not saying that you're a fucking idiot and you're just too dumb. That's not what they mean. They just mean there are movies out there that are elevated, that are more psychological, more cerebral, more layered, more symbolic. And if you don't understand symbolism, or you don't understand those nuances and tiny idiosyncrasies and details, then you're not going to get it. It's just going to go over your head. That's not saying that you are dumb. It just, there's lots of things we understand and lots of things we don't. So I do think that having an ending like that, yes, it does elevate it a little bit in the realm of a Halloween slasher movie, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of, but again, it's more the principle of the ending. Whether they do that, whether they do my idea or something else, it's the same principle that I think needs to be applied. And I'm kind of leaning towards them. I think they're going to do that. I think they are going to do. I think Michael is going to die. I don't think he's going to walk off into the ether. I don't think they're going to look over the balcony and he's suddenly going to be gone and then, the movie's going to end. I think that's too uncertain. I do. I think it's for this. You see, for the original Halloween, there were no Halloween movies before it. There were no examples of them just going on and on and on and on and on. And it was a complete story in and of itself. Laurie had an arc. She didn't believe in the boogeyman. By the end of the movie, she does believe in the boogeyman. It was the boogeyman. As a matter of fact, it was. And then he looks over the balcony and he's gone. And that's the end, right? The moral of the story is you can't kill the boogeyman. Evil will always live. Evil will always be out there. As I've often said, it's that 90-minute Hitchcockian kind of Twilight Zone episode. Now, I think that's more difficult to do because there's been so many sequels and so many iterations, I don't think they're going to just do that because it's too Michael's still out there. What the fuck? I guess they're going to be making another one then. I think this is going to feel a little more complete. I think Michael is going to die, but it's going to end on more of that philosophical note. That's what I think based on the information we have right now. And then, let's see, that was 4, 3, 2. And then number 1 is, I think, okay, so we're talking about some characters here. I think Hawkins is going to, let me see here, Hawkins. I think he's going to live. I think Hawkins is going to live. It's just a feeling I have. I think Allison is going to live as well. I don't think Allison is going to die. I think Lindsay will die. I think Lindsay's going to die, but I don't think Allison is going to die. Like I said, oh yes, and in relation to all that, I think this is going to be the last Halloween as we know it, connected to the 1978 original. I don't think it's going to be the last Halloween movie they ever make. But I do not believe, no matter how successful it is, to be honest with you. If it's astronomically successful, that's a different story. But I think Halloween Ends will be a moderate success. David Gordon Green is going on to do The Exorcist now. Listen, could they always do another movie in this timeline with Allison? Sure. But, then good luck, because then you're going to find yourself right back where you started and why you made the creative choice to remove all of the sequels apart from the first one. I do think this is the ending of this story. The story connected to the 1978 original. And I think it's going to feel like that. I think you're going to feel that, even if they ended on more of a philosophical, I think you're going to feel very complete. Again, at least I'm hoping so. But that doesn't mean that they can't go off and do other things down the road. But this story connected to the 1978 original, I think is it. I don't think they're going to go off and do Halloween 9 after Halloween Resurrection. There's no point in doing that. Halloween Resurrection is a colossal failure. So I know there are people out there that are fans of it and that want to see it. But when you talk about it from a business perspective, it makes no business sense. They're not going to end this and then go do Halloween 9. That doesn't make any sense. I think it's more logical that they'll try and tap into Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. I think that is the likely next scenario. It's got a built-in fan base, a proven IP, and a lot of potential. Whether that's a remake, a reboot, a requel, a sequel, whatever, I think that's more likely what they would probably explore. Will Michael Myers be dead forever? No, of course. They'll reboot him like 5-10 years down the road, whatever the case is. But I think this is the last one connected to this story. And I think Allison lives, Hawkins lives, Lindsay dies. All the other characters, of course, we don't know too much about yet. So those are my 5 predictions based on the information we have right now. That was in no particular order. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate you sticking around. If you're watching after the fact and you've made it this far, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But as you can see, I'm very detailed oriented and I like to go on based on evidence and little sort of tidbits of information and things we know, not just shooting from the hip can be fun, but I like to kind of tackle what we know so far. And everything you've heard in this video is based on what we know as of May the 4th, 2022 at 1:58 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This could change tomorrow morning. Do you know what I'm saying? So just keep that in mind. Make sure you keep that in mind if you're watching this video 3 months from now and the trailer is out. Don't comment below and go, well, you were wrong and it's you. It's based, you got to think about the context of when we're talking about this, right? It happens, folks. It happens. I've had people watch 3-year-old videos of mine and comment like it's new. Anyways, I love you guys. Let's head over to the chat room and see what you guys and gals are saying. And yeah, if you want to, again, if you want your question guaranteed an answer, send in a super chat. That's how it will be guaranteed an answer for obvious reasons. So let's go over now to the, I know some did come in. Let's see what we got going on here. A few did come in, not too many. That's good. Matthew Farisi, right? Farisi, I think I'm saying that right. I think it's Farisi, I think. Sends in $4.99 and says, let's keep the weird side plots to a bare minimum. Just a Halloween movie. Also, Barker should receive the franchise's more brutal death of all time. Yeah, well, hey, there's another one that I think is going to die. I think Barker is going to die. And it's okay if he goes first. Listen, I know he's the black guy, but it's okay if he goes first because technically, you know, this is one continuous story. This is Halloween 18. So he didn't die first. There were some people that said, hey, Barker dies first in your Halloween sequel concept. Well, yeah, but it's the same night. It's the same story. So technically he didn't die first. But nonetheless, yes, I agree with you. You know, the things that I want to see really at the end of the day, despite all the things that I've talked about here today. And to be fair, a lot of the character points that I talked about with Laurie and Allison and the development, all that, I actually do want to see that. That actually is meat to me, that's substance. But at the end of the day, just bring it home. You're coming in for the landing. The weather is clear. Don't do anything too crazy. And it sounds like we have to be prepared for the potentiality of that there is something they've, you know, woven into the narrative that, you know, is going to blow people's minds open, right? Open. So maybe it's going to, again, another thing that could mean is that it could allow you to look at the franchise and the whole story from a different perspective that you've never seen before. Well, I mean, that is a risk. That is a risk. It is a huge risk. And filmmakers know that. They know that when they're dealing with a narrative that has a twist or something in it that is going to allow the audience to see the bigger picture from a perspective they've never seen before, that is a risk because, you know, some people may love it. Some people may not like it. It could be mixed. It could be all loved, all hated. You just don't know. You got to just do it. If you believe in it and it makes sense and it's not avant-garde for the sake of being avant-garde, that's the important thing. It makes sense narratively. It doesn't feel shoehorned in, right? It doesn't feel synthetically created. It's organic. And if it feels organic and it feels right, then maybe it'll work. But the second it feels insulting to the audience, that's when you're going to lose them. And that's why I think, listen, you're on your last legs here. It's the last movie. Don't do something too crazy. Just bring it in for a landing, stick the landing, settle it down, stalking, lurking, give us some, you know, there, not there, in the shadows, classic Michael Myers that we didn't quite get in the last two movies, you know, some nice stalking, some nice chase scenes, you know, really bring it home, really give us a Halloween movie. Don't get too crazy. It's unnecessary. We'll see. We'll see. Southpaw82 sends in $5, says, Dave, how do you feel about Laurie dying in the first act? Allison then takes over the rest of the film, becoming the new Laurie. That's my prediction. I think that's a little early. I think that's a little anticlimactic, to be honest with you. It's always possible that they may do that. They might do that. But it's not something that I would do. So I think it's a little early. I do think they're going to kill Laurie. And hopefully it's in some, you know, meaty, heroic way with substance, like sacrificing herself to save her granddaughter and, you know, whatever, right? Because then it's more, you know, you can digest it better, right? It doesn't feel insulting to the fans or the audience. But I don't think she's going to die in the first act and then Allison takes on the rest of the movie. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but you never know. Jordan Ellis sends in a very generous super chat of $19.99. Thank you, Jordan. Says, hi, Dave. I heard from someone who claimed they saw the teaser for HNs. Okay. And they said the shapes mask seemed to be the same, but with heavy blood stains and worn down. Maybe maybe he's never been caught. Not sure. Your thoughts. Great question. Yes, I do know somebody that was at CinemaCon covering it, and I reached out to them, and they said too that the mask, at least in that one little clip, looked to be the same. Well, here are the options. So it's entirely possible, as I've said to you. Of course, we have no evidence of this. This is purely speculation. But as I've said many times, you know, it's possible that between the ending of Halloween Kills and the beginning of Halloween Ends, you may need a buffer, right? You may need a little bit of maybe like a prologue, you know, that sort of brings us up to speed maybe a bit. So maybe, I don't know. I'd be very curious to know, and I didn't ask this person this, and I should go back and ask, were we able to see the outfit that Laurie was in? A lot of people are very obsessed with the mask, which I find interesting. But if you really want to know where that clip from the CinemaCon trailer maybe or may not take place in the movie, what are the clothes that Laurie is in? Because if it looks like she's in the same clothes she was leaving the hospital, maybe this is a bit of a prologue. Maybe this is Laurie arriving to the Myers house, and maybe, just maybe, the kitchen is the Myers house kitchen. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know, right? But could it be a prologue? I mean, it could be, yes. It could be sort of the buffer that connects everything. I don't think you need it, because I think through proper exposition that is properly motivated, and what I mean by that is, of course, obviously movie is always a medium that you want to show and not tell as much as you can. But of course, all movies have exposition. And the important thing about exposition is that it has to be properly motivated. So, you know, two people have to be having a conversation. And what I mean by properly motivated is that, you know, the information that character A is sharing with character B doesn't already know that information. So it makes sense. It's properly motivated. The scene makes sense. The circumstances for which they are having that conversation make sense. And of course, through that conversation, exposition is being delivered for the audience to bring them up to speed. Exposition happens all the time. But if it's properly motivated and it's well executed, then it's fine, right? One of the worst examples of not properly motivated exposition is in Black Christmas 2019, when the main girl there and her friend are in the car, and the main girl, I forget her name now in the movie, she's just reciting the entire movie to her friend, but her friend was there. Her friend has gone through her friend already knows that. Well, it was clearly just exposition for the audience, and it didn't, you know, that's not how you're supposed to do it, right? So, anyway, so, you know, yeah, I mean, I don't think you need it, as long as you have something that's properly motivated through exposition to bring you up to speed to what happened after Laurie left the hospital. We can find that out through a therapy session she's in, through a conversation that, you know, whatever the case is, right? With Hawkins or, you know, what have you. Maybe a little flashback, who knows? But I don't think that's going to be... sorry. So the Laurie thing. So yeah, I mean, the blood looking, the mask looking very similar to the way that it looked at the end of Halloween Kills is circumstantial evidence at the very least that this could be the same night. This could be the prologue that I was talking about. It's always possible. It's always possible. I don't think the mask is going to change much. I know Darren Sands of the Slaughtered Lamb Movie Podcast has said this, and I agree with him. I think this would be fun. It would be fun, again, as long as it's properly motivated and makes sense, if Michael ends up with a new mask, a mask that looks very similar to his original mask from 1978, and maybe that's the mask that, you know, kind of that goes through the rest of the movie. I don't know if they're going to do that. I think it's likely that they'll just continue on with this same mask, and it'll just continue to deteriorate. It's always possible too that, I guess this could have been a prediction I should have thrown into the larger narrative, that it's possible that people aren't celebrating Halloween. I mean, if they're still in Haddonfield, if Laurie is still living in Haddonfield and Hawkins is still, if everybody is still in Haddonfield, which you would think that they might move out, that's another thing too. Maybe they've moved to a different town. Maybe they've moved to Russellville, right? Maybe they've moved away. I mean, why would you stay in that town? Why would the Myers house still be standing? That's another thing that I think is likely, that the Myers house is probably condemned and demolished. I mean, think of all the murders that have happened there since 1963. You wouldn't let that thing stand and try to sell it, although maybe you would. So yeah, I think it's likely that the mask will be the same mask, just sort of a deterioration. Another thing that I forgot to mention too in the bigger plot points is that, there's that thing where it's like, is he caught again or has he just disappeared? Based on the information we have right now, which is not very much, I'm making the prediction that I don't think he's been caught. I think he's just walked off into the ether, which doesn't really make sense when you think about it. I don't particularly like that. I don't particularly like him being caught and then released again or escaped again either. But there's only two ways you can go. He's either caught, escapes, or he's not caught and he's just out there. But if he's just out there, well, how's he been surviving for 4 years? And are they going to explain that? Is he eating stray cats and dogs and got a Walmart greeter position or something? I don't know. I just find it a little strange, but based on right now, I think that's likely kind of what they'd be moving towards. Let me see here. Matthew Farisi says, sends in $5, says, what makes me hopeful they will kill Laurie is that H Kills, for better or worse, showed that they are not scared of killing off characters. Yeah, it's true, but if there's one thing that Halloween Kills also showed us is that they're also not afraid of killing off legacy characters in really shitty, unemotional, unaffecting ways. I mean, the death of Brackett, the death of Tommy, and the death of Marion, I felt nothing. I felt absolutely nothing. Now, you can come back and, try to spit it and say, well, creative. I don't know if this is what they would say, but you could come back and say, well, creatively, this is what we wanted to do. We just wanted to make them just like everybody else. And it's like, sure. If that makes you sleep at night, okay. But it's not something I would do. If you're going to kill Brackett, if you're going to kill Tommy, if you're going to kill Marion, I know Marion's been killed before, but those movies don't exist. That's the mindset you have to have. When you say these movies don't exist anymore in this timeline, they don't exist anymore. Regardless of what we've seen before, it's not connected. It's not the same. So that means you should be able to approach certain things from a certain perspective, regardless of whether it's happened before. Of course, you got to do it a bit differently. You don't want to carbon copy it. But there should have been weight. There should have been some sort of emotional weight to the death of Brackett, Tommy, and Marion. Now, I think they tried with Tommy a little bit because there was that moment in Halloween Kills where, everything slows down and the audio kind of drops. And Michael and Tommy are looking at each other, right? There's that little moment there where they're looking at each other before Michael does him in with the baseball bat. I think it was the baseball bat. So, there was a bit of a moment there. You could tell that was a creative choice where they wanted to have that moment, right? Where, Tommy, you can't kill the boogeyman. The Tommy Doyle looking at the shape, for the first time in however many years. And there they are, eyes locking, right? But you could tell they tried to do something with that. But Brackett went down. I mean, Brackett went down like a fucking sack of potato. Like I just felt nothing. He was just there. Same with Marion. So I agree with you. They're not afraid to kill legacy characters. But I don't know if I have the confidence that they're going to do it in a profound way that will make the audience feel the impact of the loss of that character. So we'll see, though. We shall see. All right, let me see here. Where shall I go? Right? Did I get? I did get the Jordan Ellis one. Got that one. Sean Sheridan sends in €2 and says, do you think they will kill both Jamie and Michael? Jamie? Oh, you mean Jamie Lee Curtis. Do I think they will? Based on right now, yes, I do. Based on the information we have right now, yes, I do think they will. That doesn't mean they will, but it's a feeling I have right now. But of course, that can change when we get more information. But it's a feeling. It's a feeling. Let me see here. And then we got Charles, is it Gomez? Charlie Gomez? Or Gomes, maybe? There's a couple of different ways you could say that. My apologies if I'm saying it incorrectly. Charlie sends in $5 and says, what do you think the mask will be like? Well, like I just said a few moments ago, I don't think there's going to be that much of a difference unless they do what our buddy Darren Sands from the Slaughtered Lamb Movie Podcast wants, which I kind of think is kind of cool. And of course, it has to make sense that he gets, that there is a freshly painted white 1978 Michael Myers mask. Maybe they're selling it in costume stores because he's a serial killer, right? He's a famous serial killer. I mean, you can go into costume stores today and buy masks of Richard Nixon and Donald Trump and, not necessarily like, serial killers necessarily, but who's to say, you can't, right? So barring that, if they don't do that, I don't think the mask is going to change much. It might look more deteriorated, right? I think it's going to look more deteriorated, but I don't think they're going to change the fundamental look of the mask. I still think it's like, how you went from 18 to Kills, and the Kills mask is burnt and charred, but it still looks like Michael Myers. And one of the things that is the most important thing about the Michael Myers mask, as we all know, is how you light it. You can have the best looking Michael Myers mask in the world. I have and have had wonderful, authentic looking H1 Michael Myers masks created from some incredible independent artists on the Michael Myers mask scene. You look at it, you're like, holy shit, that's Michael Myers. I'm not talking, no disrespect to Trick or Treat Studios, okay? But I'm talking the independent guys who really fucking, they're not mass producing these things, so they can weather it and they look amazing. And if you have a Michael Myers mask from one of the independent artists, you know what I'm talking about. There's you can have the best looking Michael Myers mask in the world, but it is at the end of the day in all how you light it. You can look at some BTS photos from the original Halloween where Nick Castle's holding up the Michael Myers. It doesn't look anything special, right? It doesn't look like anything special at all. But you light it, in the shadow and the darkness, right? You know what I mean? It can be really effective. So I don't think they're going to change too much. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The only change I see is a potential return to the 78 mask by way of he needs it because it's deteriorated so much that it's just fallen apart. So he happens to walk into a store or steal it from a kid or, whatever, like something like that maybe. But barring that, I think they're going to stick with the same mask. Southpaw 82 says, do not have Michael speak or fully show his face. Ooh, that's another one. That's another one I did not touch on and that I could have touched on. That is possible. That is possible. And I'm in agreement with you there. That goes back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of the ambiguity of it and the mystique, and the unknown factor of Michael Myers. He doesn't need to speak. We don't need to see his face. We've already seen his bald head, shout out to James Jude Courtney. We've already seen him far more than I ever would have shown him. I mean, I can't even believe how much we've seen of Michael Myers in this new trilogy. Now, again, you can say that, well, you've seen him, but you haven't seen him. Fair enough. That's fair. But it's still, it makes me worried that, to your point, Southpaw, that maybe we will see his face full on with a word. No face, no face, no communication. No face, no communication. I could not agree with you more. Jordanella sends in $2.999. Thanks, buddy. Says, I have to say, I truly appreciate there being very little about this film out there. I could not agree more. Really gives us, the audience, an opportunity to go into this thing knowing absolutely nothing. Really great. I could not agree more with you. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you sent in two there. Actually, it was Mandy D that sent in the next one. My apologies, Mandy. And Jordan, I could not agree with you more. I think it's great. Mandy D sends in $9.99, says, "Hi, Dave. I had to join late. That's okay. I missed if you said Laurie and Michael die. I heard Lindsay, yes, but Hawkins and Allison alive. By the way, I hope Michael isn't caught again. It feels tired." I could not agree more with you, Mandy. Of course, there's no way of knowing for sure yet if Laurie and Michael die. Laurie might die, Michael might live. Michael might die, Laurie might live. What I am predicting, again, is based on sort of the little bit of information that we know right now, which is not a lot. The feeling I get is that both Michael and Laurie are going to die, not necessarily together, although if I was doing the film, that is what I would do, because it began with Michael and Laurie, and I think it should end with Michael and Laurie. And what I mean, no, of course I know it began with Michael and Judith, but what I mean by that is that the crux of the story, right? The crux of the narrative, started with Michael and Laurie, and I think it should end with Michael and Laurie. That's what I mean. Obviously, technically, it began with Laurie and Judith. But so that's what I would do, because that's what I did in my sequel concept. But I do think that they're both going to die. What that means, die, I don't know. But I hope it means more than a stupid, gimmicky, lowbrow, you want to talk about highbrow, lowbrow, cheap cliffhanger. I don't want any cheap cliffhanger where like his eyes open. You know what I mean? Shit like that. Like I've talked about 1,000 times. Don't give me that. Don't give me that. But yeah, totally. Okay. Have I got all the super chats? Let me see here. I think I got them all, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check here. I think I've got them all, though I'm not entirely sure. Let me just refresh this and see if I have. Yes, Mandy D is the last one, I think. Okay, let's see if I can get some non-super chat ones in here before the super chat ones come back in. Let me see. Dennis Williams says, even as a fan of Halloween 6, I don't want him explained in that way. I rather not know and speculate on my own. Halloween 6 was not my favorite, but I do enjoy it. Much rather the mystique and subtle supernatural approach. I could not agree more, Dennis. And again, it's look, there are many different types of fans, right? And it all depends on the type of fan you are. But for me, I'm somebody that really appreciates the original intent of the character. And I know that there is now at least circumstantial evidence to suggest that they're kind of abandoning that now. Look what happened with Michael in the street with the mob, and he's being shot point blank and beaten, and then he survives like it's nobody's business. There's a little bit of beatdown that he takes at the end of the original Halloween, but you see, this is the thing too, is that it's so hard because the original Halloween was supposed to be a one-off. So it's hard to connect things in the later sequels to that original film. You can do it, but you're forever putting a square peg into a round hole because there was never the intention to continue it. So anything that you see that might make sense to you, it doesn't really. It's just made up, because you got to figure out how to connect it. So I don't know. But I'm in agreement with you. The mystique's got to be preserved. It's unnecessary. Yes, you can explain it. You can come up with some sort of theory or some sort of explanation, full-on explanation as to why Michael is behaving the way he is, and the why factor, which is the big factor that everybody wants to know. Why he's doing what he's doing and all this kind of stuff. Sure, yeah, you can do it. But it's not necessary for the satisfaction and completion of a story. Not this story. Now, the story, listen, it does have to come to a conclusion. But that's why I use the Irish, again, I think it's Irish, horror film, The Hole in the Ground, which I just recently watched on Netflix, which I really liked. And again, that's a movie that ends it feels complete. It feels like it's come to a conclusion. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end. I don't feel like I need to know more, but it ends on more of a philosophical cliffhanger, more of a, you know what I mean? There's still that, well, I know, well, that. You can do that. And that's especially when it comes to Michael Myers, especially when it comes to Halloween. That's what you need to do. That's what you have to do. This isn't Freddy Krueger. This isn't Jason Voorhees. This isn't Chucky. You know, you've got to do it this way because it preserves the integrity of the character, of the intent of the character. You know, you can give theories. You can have the characters in the movie. You can have the characters in Halloween Ends. You can have Laurie and Allison and Hawkins and Lindsay and Barker and whoever. You can have them speculating. Why is he? What is he? What is it about? Like what Hawkins was sort of doing in Halloween Kills, right? Talking about the evil and how it's not about you and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, but it must remain in that, you know, as Sheriff Brackett said to Dr. Loomis, fancy talk. It's got to remain very poetic and sort of, you know, philosophical, symbolic, right? It's not literal. Don't let the cat out of the bag literally. Just plant the seed and kind of play with it a little bit. And it's so much more fun to do that. It's so much better when you do not define evil. You do not give an explanation for it. You can give theories, you know, something for the characters to ponder, something for the audience to ponder. Yes, you can do that, but do not give a concrete, quantifiable explanation. Yes, this is what it is. This is the answer. Don't do that. That's a recipe for disaster because you are removing the mystique. You're removing the boogeyman. Don't do that. Don't do it. You can have a complete story without doing that. And one that actually is the end. It's it. It's over. Like it's done. You can do that. You can do it. All right, let me see here. We got Michael Thorne sends in $5. Thank you, Michael. Says Michael's first appearance in Halloween Ends should be Laurie seeing him through a window. Let me try this again. Michael's first appearance in Halloween Ends should be Laurie seeing him through a window next to a car, paralleling her first time seeing him in 1978. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think it's I think in a vacuum, I think it's a cool image, you know, like we've seen that kind of thing before, like I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not against it. Whether it makes sense to have it as the first time they see each other in the movie, I don't know. You know, I don't know. You know, I can't dial in on that and say that, yes, I agree that I think that's the first thing they should do or the first time, you know, they should see each other because I don't know. I don't know if that's what I would want to be their first meeting in this movie. But I'm not against the idea of the imagery, you know, of the idea. Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Let me see here. What do you got? Zach Axiola says, Dave, any excitement for the Kenobi series? I'm elated that Ewan McGregor is returning to arguably his most iconic role. My favorite actor playing my favorite character in all of media again. Count me in. Not really, to be honest with you. I'll watch it because I do like Ewan McGregor in the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I'm kind of Star Wars tapped out. I'm too, I don't know. I've never been a real big, like, I just think this is unnecessary. Again, I'm, you know, I live in a world of mystique and mystery. I live in a world of mystique and mystery. What does that even mean? I just don't think all these backstories and going back to tell the why and yes, look, it's fun. I'll watch it. I'll sit back, you know, and if it's really good and I have no reason to believe it, you know, it won't be. But I just wish they would move on. I just wish they would go forward. You know, now they don't because nostalgia and these characters are big business and they're familiar and they're proven. It's already built into the, you know, the pop culture zeitgeist. So, you know, you do an Obi-Wan series, be like, you know, going back and do it if Solo was successful and all that kind of stuff. And I actually like the Solo film, to be honest with you, but I don't know. I mean, you know, I watched The Mandalorian. I liked the first season of The Mandalorian. I watched the first 2 episodes of the second season of The Mandalorian, and then I lost interest. It's not that I wasn't enjoying the first 2 episodes of the second season. I just lost interest. I just never went back. And I haven't watched the Book of Boba Fett. Not because I think it's going to be bad. I just don't need to go back and revisit all these characters. So it doesn't mean it's not going to be good. It doesn't mean we're not going to watch and go, yeah, this was great. But do I have excitement for it, which was your question? Not really. I'll be watching Stranger Things before I watch Kenobi. But I'm happy for you. And I'm happy for all you Star Wars fans out there that are excited for Ewan McGregor returning to the role. Let's see here. Did I miss any? Hang on. I don't think oh, wait. No, that was Michael Thorne. I got that one, right? I think I got that super chat. Yes. Okay. Just want to make sure I'm not missing any. Let me see here. What do we got? Scrolling back here. We got Mike Johnson says, Michael has a shelf life, like you said, Dave. He's the kind of character villain that you can't overly explain. Agreed. Yeah, I did a video. I think I might have been, I don't want to take credit for, but I think I might have been one of the first people to say that, because that's a video I did about 3 or 4 years ago. I did a video where I was talking about Michael has a shelf life. And yeah, what I mean by that is, again, I'm going back to the original intent of the character, right? And really at the end of the day, as much as the only thing that Halloween 2, look, yeah, I'm just thinking, how can I say this and not be so verbose? But I agree. I think, but it's like that with anything, right? I mean, when you have a mysterious character, the more you exploit that character, the more that and that's important to remember, right? That Michael Myers was built on the foundation of mystery and ambiguity. That's what he was built on, right? It's like Boba Fett. Boba Fett was built on ambiguity, mystery, not really being there, Well, he loses that mystique. Pick your character, any character that is built around ambiguity and mystery. The more you showcase that character, the more you exploit that character, the more you reveal about that character, the less mysterious and the less cool the character is. That's just fact. That's just storytelling. It's just writing. So yes, I agree with you. The original intent of the Michael character has a shelf life. And that's why I think, okay, they said they were going to go back to the original intent of the character for Halloween 18. For the most part, they did in terms of what the character was like. Halloween Kills, there's some questions in terms of his, but again, to keep this, even in the original film, he was a human being with a supernatural element. There was a supernatural edge to him. So I'm okay with Michael having a supernatural edge. And that just simply means that there's a few little things that he does that's kind of creepy. That's weird. How can he do that? How can he withstand that? I'm okay with that. But yes, they did push the envelope with that. With the beatdown in the street at the end of Halloween Kills, they did push the envelope for sure. So what does that mean for Halloween Ends? Well, all I can tell you is that I agree with you, is that the more you go on, you can't go on, you can't continue to tell Michael Myers stories and keep some sort of ambiguity there. You just can't do it unless you just keep going back to doing another alternate sequel to the first one, another alternate, you know what I mean? But you can't continue in one linear timeline and put in 9 movies and expect his mystique to be just as cool in the 9th movie. It's just not how it works. So that's another reason why I do think that this Halloween Ends is the end as we know it. That doesn't mean the end of Halloween movies forever. I just mean the end of this story. The end of this story as we know it, connected to the 78 original. All right, what time is it here? I've been going 1 hour and 28 minutes. All right, I'll go a little bit longer. Let me see here. What do we got? We got, let me see here. I'm just scrolling. Keep that scrolling going. Juan Rivera says, I will say this. They did a good job showing and hiding his face in Halloween Kills. Yeah, they did. I mean, you can still, here's part of the problem too. Here's part of the problem. Because of the era we live in, right? We live in an era where, actors are on social media now. Not everybody, but of course, a lot are. We know their faces. They're very accessible. They go to conventions. We know what these people look like. Part of the problem with James Jude Courtney's rendition of Michael Myers, he's brilliant as the Shape. I think he's fantastic. But part of the problem is we know what he looks like. And so even if you don't show his face, we still know who's under there. So even if you show like a glimpse of his profile or, an extreme close-up on his nose and his eyes, or you just see his bald head walking away from the camera, our mind immediately goes to what that man looks like. We already know what he looks like. We don't need not to see his face. We already know what he looks like. And it's just, it's elevated to the extreme when you show the back of his head, because I'm like, well, that's James Jude Courtney. I know that's James Jude Courtney because I know what James Jude Courtney looks like, because his face is everywhere in the Halloween community. Whereas, 30, 40 years ago, that didn't exist. You didn't know who that was. So even if maybe they showed a glimpse or something, you couldn't put the pieces together. You couldn't compartmentalize the images like a puzzle and put those pieces together because you didn't know what he looked like. Regardless of seeing a slight profile or an extreme close-up or the back of his head, you didn't know. That's the problem with actors being so accessible today, is that you don't need, you can just show his face a tiny bit. It doesn't matter. I already know what the dude looks like. Now, you could argue and say, well, you already know what the dude looks like under the mask. Well, that's true, but I can get lost in that and not think about that because every time I see him, he's got a mask on. So I'm just seeing Michael Myers. But the second you remove that mask and you show a little bit of James Jude Courtney, I go, well, there's James Jude Courtney. You know what I mean? So I would avoid it. I would avoid it for that specific reason. 100%. 100%. 100%. Let me see here. Oh, it's 2:35. I have to go in a few minutes here, folks. Lee Connor says, John Johnson, great. Oh, you're talking to, okay. You're talking to somebody in the chat room. I like to see that. Just going back, making sure I didn't miss any super chats. It doesn't look like I did. That's good. Let me see. Okay. We'll take this thing to, all right, we'll go another, well, it is an hour and 90, an hour. You know what? That's a good spot right there because it's 90 minutes. So that's a good spot right there. All right, folks, listen, that is going to do it for me here on this episode. Yeah, just this impromptu episode talking about 5 predictions that I have for Halloween Ends. If you've made it this far, if you're commenting after the fact, comment below and let me know your thoughts. What are some of the predictions you have for Halloween Ends? And are they based on anything? Are they based on the information we have right now? Are they based on just maybe, some ideas that you've conjured up in your own mind? Comment below and let me know. Oh, super chat comes in right under the radar. I'll have to get this one before we go. Jake Blair says, wouldn't mind if they tapered back on the gore in Halloween Ends a little and focused on making the kills more dramatic and suspenseful. Well, Jake, I think that's exactly what you're going to get. I think you're still going to get some gore for sure, but it's not going to be like Halloween Kills. Halloween Ends is going to be a much more intimate, smaller film. So I think you are okay with that. I think you can expect that. Thank you to my great moderators, of course, Frank Riker, Tabitha Shore, Darren Sands, and Chris Baber for doing what you guys do. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you to all the super chat questions that came in today, and of course the non-super chat questions that I was able to get to. Really appreciate that. But yeah, comment below and let me know your thoughts. What are 5 predictions that you have that you think are going to come true? And if you can, tell me why you've come to that conclusion. John, don't just show me the answer. Show me the work you did to get there. Like math class back in the day, we all did this. We all would just like sneak a peek at the back of the book at the answers, or we'd sneak something on somebody's page and we'd just write the answer. And then the teacher would go, well, that's great. The answer is correct, but you didn't show me how you got the answer. And you need to show me how you got the answer because then that tells me you did the work yourself. And that's what I like to do sometimes. And that's what I try to do here a little bit with sort of pointing back to some of the ideas. But hey, you let me know your thoughts below in the comment section. I would love to know. If you want to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all my links are right there. If you're not following me there, what the hell are you doing? There it is. There's Twitter. There's Instagram. There's Facebook. I also have links to my official websites in the description below, IMDb, all that kind of stuff. Check them out until your heart's content. And when your heart is content, check them out again. All right, folks, have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I will talk to you soon. Cheers.